Good morning, everybody. The question now we're faced is not, can we electrify this country, but how soon can we do it? I've been driving electric cars for the last decade, probably done 100,000 miles on battery-only cars. And I remember showing my first electric car, a Citroen C0, to Clarkson, and looked at the car, he looked at me, looked at the car again, and then said, "Are you sure you're not gay?" This week, or was it last week, James May told us what his latest car was, a Tesla Model X. So you can see how in that period of time, opinions have shifted and changed massively. So we are now at the point where we have the technology. The Tesla will do 320 miles to one charge. I did it in a Model 3 Performance with everything on. It's now a really, really credible car that you can own as your single car. But the problem is the infrastructure is going to fall badly behind. As Christina says, the pace of change is now going to come really quite fast. 900 Model 3s coming in every day from California, and other players, e-tron, iPace, all beginning to have credible positions as a car choice with very credible ranges, bigger batteries. But what have we got? We've got 20,000 chargers, this much vaunted figure. But a lot of those are 3 kilowatts, put in the early days by councils who were optimistic and did them at low cost. And they broadly are pretty useless because they take hours and hours to charge your car. We've got 1,500 Rapids, 50 kilowatts, but that's not enough. With a Jaguar I-Pace 90 kilowatt battery, you need a 100 kilowatt charger, and there are less than 5 of those publicly available in the whole country. Charge an I-Pace at home, and you're looking at about 14 hours. So that infrastructure is so, so important. And if we're to do it properly, we mustn't make the mistakes that we made last time and put these chargers in a haphazard way and not get the power supply right. We've got to plan it. And nobody's ever done this before. No society, no company, nobody. This is all new stuff, so you can't use the modeling. Is there a glass of water or a bottle of water around? You can't use the modeling that we've had before. You have to use empirical, evidence-based information. So, what does that information look like? It looks like, first, an understanding of the strategic road network. That's obviously a really important point about where your traffic flows are, where your pinch points, where your utilization is. Then you have to have an understanding about power supply. Now, power supply, where are they? The substations. You've got to put in 50 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts because we can't rely on the, thank you very much, Colin, on the 3s and the 7s and the 22s. And those substations are really, really important. So you need that modeling from National Grid to tell us the accessibility. Then on top of that layer, you need to put algorithms. And this is why the algorithm people are so important in all this, because you need empirical, evidence-based data. And they have millions and millions of miles of EV fleets to know where that optimization should be. Because here's the thing, if we don't look at that in a really scientific way, we're going to waste an opportunity of a generation. It's so important that we get this right now because there will be no second chance. And if by 2025 we have 1 million EVs on our roads, then we are going to need a world-class charging network. And not just chargers by the side of the road, not just chargers in service stations, but EV hubs becoming destinations that people really want to go to, not necessarily to charge, but to have a workspace environment where they can have time between meetings and charge their EV at the same time. We've got to think really, really imaginatively about this and add value to the chain. So you've got to think beyond just these objects, these 50 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt, 150 kilowatts, standing alone like sentries. Put people in an environment that they want to come to. Now, the power supply is absolutely critical. And nowhere do I hear anybody talking about how vital this is. Here are some kind of frightening numbers. If you want to put, say, 10 50 kilowatt rapids in, you're going to need a megawatt of power. If you want to put 30, 40 in, say at a motorway service station, you're going to need between 8 to 12 megawatts of power. And that's got to come from a substation, a big substation. And it's got to be close, because the cost for that cable to go 1 meter, that's buying the cable, burying it in the ground, covering it up, it's £900 a metre. So if your substation is a mile away, and you'd be very lucky if it was, you're looking at 1.2 million. But if it's 60, 70 miles away, then you know those costs are going to ramp up. So unless we understand that those power stations, those substations are really, really vital to this, and we map them, and we use our algorithms, and we understand where they need to be, we'll get this critically wrong. So that's where we need to start beginning. And we need to understand that with policy, as Christina says, driving change, we've got benefit in kind in 2020, where you absolutely zero BIK on electric cars, and also you'll be able to claim the VAT back if you've run a business, and also get your corporation tax right down 100%. We're going to see a really serious take-up. And we're going to see more and more bigger battery cars, like e-tron, like I-Pace, like Tesla Model 3. So we now have this decision. Do you put in the £21,000 50 kilowatt charger, or do you put in the 61,000 scalable 50 to 300 kilowatt charger? And of course the decision is you put in the 60 grand one, because if you don't, we will not future-proof this network. And that's what we've got to do. This is what government really needs to understand. It's now no longer about tokenism. It's now no longer about virtue signaling. It's about building a world-class EV hub charging network that will create economic activity, that will create jobs, that will become an international example, and also, most importantly, that will encourage people to do the long-distance commutes. Because as an EV driver, I've got a Leaf. It's just great for town, but when you're looking at long journeys, nobody has the time to make those 3 or 4 stops. In an ideal world, lovely, but it's just not possible. So you take another car. So we need to broaden that EV usage to the long-distance commute. And as Christina has shown us, people with big batteries in their cars are now rapid charging and beginning to tread further and further down the motorway network. The goal here is to have a strategic road network where you have nobody who is longer than 50 miles away from a rapid charger. And that includes a motorway network. So EV hubs all over the place with solar and 12 megawatt connections. So you have the power. And also we need to think about battery storage as well. The grid is just dumping huge amounts of renewable energy. We can't have that. We've got to have batteries on site where you can store 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 megawatts. So you can balance the grid that way. Because I don't believe vehicle to grid is the future at all. If I charge my electric car, I husband that electricity. I harvest every single mile. I'm not going to sell it back to the grid for a quid or whatever. I want to keep it. And if you had to create 1 megawatt of capacity from EVs, you would need 18,000 Nissan Leafs to create that 1 megawatt in terms of V2G. So we really need to get across these numbers and understand how important they are, and they will influence our decisions, and use artificial intelligence to make sure that we get it absolutely right. Because the goal, the prize, is huge. We've heard about the reduction in CO2, we've heard how they liberate people, and we've heard how important it is for us to decarbonise our road network. But we're now at this tumultuous moment where EVs are now broadly accepted as the future. We've got to get the prices down, we've got to get the incentives up, and we've got to let them use bus lanes and free parking anywhere in cities. But we've got to make sure that infrastructure is there, because without it, we will not erode range anxiety, and we will not encourage the long-distance EV commute. So it's up to government, it's up to private investors as well, because one thing's for sure, government will not do it on their own. We have to collaborate with them and come up with imaginative, creative solutions that say this is what the future looks like. We've future-proofed it, we've made it reliable, we've made it desirable, we've added value. So that is the goal, and we have to get it right, quite simply, because it will create so much inward investment, so much economic activity, and it will cost probably 10 to 15 billion pounds, maybe more. But when you think that we are spending, or thinking of spending, 100 billion on a railway that does 200 miles an hour and doesn't take any freight, because it will be 100 billion by the time all the shouting is over and done with, this 15 billion to electrify the road network is a raindrop echoing in an ocean. So we really have to convince governments, ministers, politicos, civil servants, local councils that they need a plan, and they need it to be accurate, evidence-based, and future-proof. Thank you very much.